This story is so crazy, you might not believe it, but it's true. And one reason that I could convince you that it's true is that it's about some of the most high-paid, powerful people in the state of Arkansas. And they have attorneys working for the attorney powerhouses. But I'm here repeating this story over and over to anyone who will listen. And, I've gone to law enforcement, I've gone to politicians, I've gone to the state attorney general, I've even gone to the FBI. Nobody will believe me or do anything about it because I'm talking about criminal conduct by doctors and nurses at UAMS. It's the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, and it is the largest public employer in Arkansas, and they have officially, in legal documents, changed their policy, which used to and still shows in writing as patients are allowed to refuse treatment, but they have changed that officially to patients are not allowed to refuse treatment, and they are not required, the doctors and the nurses are not required, according to them, to petition a court for permission to hold a person against their will for as long as 2 weeks. It's not 72 hours, that's 2 weeks. That's how long they held my son against his will. He was conscious the entire time. He had me there advocating for him, but they would not take my opinion as a surrogate decision without explanation. I mean, the explanation was that I didn't agree with them, so they weren't going to do what I said. And they lied. They would not give him his full medical record for like 16 months after he escaped. Oh, he never escaped. He left against medical advice, but he tried to escape for 2 weeks. And every time he tried, they would manhandle him. He was there because initially he fell and he hit his head. And he did fall far, and it was definitely an injury. But they made up this story that he had fallen 35 feet. And they refused. It was an EMT who wrote that, but the EMT wasn't at the accident. He came later, and he didn't attribute that to anybody. He just said, fell 35 feet off 35-foot ladder, which is in itself kind of stupid because you don't climb to the very top of a ladder and then fall. Like you would fall to 30 feet off a 35-foot ladder. But anyways, he didn't. He fell from about the 10-foot high rung, which, yeah, that's bad. But I think the statistics were about 20% chance of, maybe even lower than that, maybe like 10% chance of fatality. And but if you fall from 35 feet, it's like a 50% chance of fatality. So it's just like way different. So he comes into the hospital, taken by the ambulance, and he allows them to do a CAT scan on his brain. He's got no abrasions on his body. That in itself is like, even with the fall from 10 feet, that was a miracle. But he just is like built tough. And so anyways, he goes into the hospital, no abrasions. They did the CT scan. He had stable bleeds. Now, I don't know if they could tell if they were there from previous times or if they happened that day. I wouldn't be surprised if they happened that day, but they didn't need to tie off the bleeders. They didn't need to do any kind of surgery. And they took one CT scan that he allowed them to take on the 13th, and then they drugged him so that he would have to allow them to take a second CT scan the following morning. And that one showed all bleeds stable. So there was no reason for them to keep him. Their reason that they gave is that he was agitated. Well, yeah, they had forced him to use fentanyl, and he's a recovered drug addict. And they're like, I mean, he had nothing in his system when he went in there. They did the initial blood test. There was no toxins, not alcohol, not any kind of drugs. He had very, very rarely used any kind of drug, even like aspirin or, you know, like I think he used antibiotics once, and, you know, he might have occasionally, and he drank alcohol about 4 times a week, 1 glass. And they forced him to use fentanyl against his protest. Oh, they didn't contact his family. So they have his cell phone. He's able to use his cell phone. At least he was when they finally gave it to him, which was like a week later. But anyways, they had his cell phone, and they didn't try to call anyone. They had his wallet with his ID, with his driver's license. They did not send anybody to his home to tell them that, you know, you have a loved one who is in the ICU. It was the next morning. This happened at like 5:30. He got into the hospital, maybe 5:15 he got into the hospital. The next morning at about 7:15 a.m., his girlfriend called him, and she was like living with him at the time, but she thought he had been out all night playing poker with his friends, which he would do sometimes. So anyways, she called, and luckily a nurse answered the phone and let her know where he was. I'm really surprised they even did that, because they wanted to keep him there, and they did not, he didn't want to stay. They didn't want family member there to tell them, you know, hey, these are his wishes, and he, you know, even if they believed this story about him falling 35 feet, which they wrote over and over, and they refused to change when he told them that he had only fallen like from the 10-foot high rung. So even if they believe that story, then if they can't do anything, like there's no imminent danger, and all they're doing is observing him, they have to let him go. But, well, that's how it used to be. But now he's suing them, and I'm suing them, and they are wiggling out of it, and they have said, their attorneys have said with certified answers that none of what I'm saying is true. They deny it all. They just like blanket denial of everything. I don't have the answer in front of me right now, but like, I mean, they would deny that they're a hospital. I mean, I don't know if they did that, but they did. They pretty much denied everything. And they've said over and over again, there was no negligence. Well, if there was no negligence, then that means that what they did was purposeful. Because I took some videos of it. Now, they destroyed their videos. They took lots of videos over 2 weeks, and they destroyed them all. Why would they do that? And there is an inference that can be had from spoliation of evidence that what is in the evidence would go against the person who spoiled it. So it's probably UAMS and the doctors that did not preserve those videos. You know, like if you had held a man against his will for 2 weeks, even if you thought that you had permission or authority to do that because, well, you're God, or, you know, you're the second coming, then you'd probably, I mean, you wouldn't have to be a brain surgeon to know that you should keep the videos that show what happened in the hospital. Oh, and they are brain surgeons, and they still didn't keep those videos. So this is just crazy. They have said there is no damage to him. But when he got there and they took the CT scan, it showed that his oscillator chains in his ear were intact. And when he left the hospital, the very first pictures that were taken at Chai, St. Vincent's, they're not faultless. I mean, they definitely tried to help UAMS as much as they could, but they showed and he went to a audiologist, and all of them show that he's got that disrupted oscillator chain in his left ear, and he is now deaf in that left ear. And his hearing on the right side's not so great either, but so he's down to about 75% hearing loss. And the other thing was they gave him the fentanyl, and then they gave him lorazepam, and then over the 2 weeks they gave him diazepam and a whole bunch of other benzodiazepines and barbiturates and Haldol, Seroquel, I don't have the list in front of me. It was long. It was scary. It could have killed a person, really. That easily killed a person. And they gave him all of those drugs, and then his language got mixed up. He got aphasia, and it was really bad. Like when they were drugging him, it would get worse. When they were tying him up, which they did for days at a time, they would bind him hands and feet to the bed. So it would get worse. Anyways, he's got aphasia, and he probably wouldn't have had that. It would have not gotten as bad in the first place, and then it would have healed a lot better had he not been, like a prisoner for 2 weeks and being starved, like literally starved, and dehydrated and just battered, had his head smashed against hard objects numerous times. And all of this I'm going to tell you some of their names. Dr. Joseph Margolick. Do not let him near you. Do not let him near you. Dr. Elizabeth Brown, complete idiot. Just the most reprehensible person I've ever met. The nurse, Susan Norseworthy. She used to be Susan Zelinsky, but somebody married her, I guess. She changed her name. So that Susan Norseworthy, she sat there on film, like on my camera, and I have it, I've posted it, you could see it on this channel. She just looked at me and said, "We never give benzos to TBIs." She had given him benzos that morning. Like, this person is a liar, flat out liar. And she was a charge nurse. So, Dr. Benjamin L. Davis, Dr. Karar Al-Jabouri, Dr. Mary, another one that changed her name. She used to be Mary K. What is her last name? Now she goes by Katie. Kimsbro or Kimsbro. Mary or Katie Kimsbro. So there's a lot of them. I'm just naming a few, just off the top of my head. I really, this is very serious. So we were suing them, and the UAMS attorney, Sherry Robinson, would not give us the defendants' addresses. So it was hard to serve them. But we had the sheriff go, and for $50 a head, they would serve the summonses. But the summonses that I paid to have served on April, I think 29th, it was either 29th or 30th or both. This sheriff did not make any attempts to serve before the time, which was 8 days later. So it was on May 7th that they should have served them, and they didn't even try. So then now these doctors and nurses are claiming that service of process was too late, so we're out of luck. And it's really sad. If there's anyone out there who thinks that people are supposed to be able to refuse treatment and that people are not allowed to be bound to beds and they're not allowed to be forced to use fentanyl or any kinds of drugs like without a court order, please contact me. You could find my address on my blog, and I've put a lot of the documents, including the medical record, there for your perusal. And the legal documents have my address and phone number on them. So, and I think you can contact me. You could even contact me in the comments, but I don't know if you could give me your contact information. Anyways, my email is bohemian_books@yahoo.com. It's B Bravo OHEM Mary IAN Nancy _BOOKS, like the plural of what you read, @yahoo.com. And if you can give us any assistance, if you know a lawyer who's brave, who wants to file a 42 U.S.C. 1983 case on behalf of my son or anything, please contact us. Thank you.